Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Love of Business on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. My name is Maria Miko Faith, and I am happy to introduce Rick Cosgrove, our guest for today's podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Miko. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. And so, let's get right into your love of business, which is estate planning. How did you get into that?
Well, it's my career. The first thing when you think, Miko, about the love of business and you want to get out there in business is you got to determine, can you bring benefit and value to others? Can you make a difference? Can you help, right? So that's just what I did. My background, to give you a little bit more about me, I spent 28 years in the banking industry. Um, Spent 10 in executive management and leadership with a top 10, we'll say, was number 7 of a Fortune 500 companies. And it's the banking industry. And I just saw so many families affected by a probate process. And many of these had these documents in place that we speak about. And they were in a position, but then the banks made decisions unbeknownst to them that threw them in a probate process. Um, I'm a little unique in that, the perception is that you have to be an attorney to do this, and that's not the case. And just to talk a little bit to my qualifications, is I'm not an attorney. Is the late 90s, I was tasked due to my knowledge with these estate documents with building out a trust department, review process department of about 10 people meeting to review these documents and fix the problems the bank had. And I just took a passion to it. So it kind of, when I left that industry, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew how I could make a difference. And then I just went and during my research and development phases, interviewed a bunch of attorneys and reaffirmed what I already knew, but I needed to make sure. And we launched our business, and it's really I just got tired of seeing families affected, and I know I can make a difference. I can help, and I have a very unique career in the sense that these documents, I've reviewed hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them. I was in it when the banks paid well and money was in the banks, believe it or not. It's a passion of mine. It's a huge passion. I made myself an expert in this field.
Well, your love of business, of your business, comes through,
Yeah, thank
which
you.
is
Yeah,
which is awesome because that's the theme of the show is to bring love and business together. And tell us a little bit about the conversation we were having earlier, before the show, just about, well, the conversation about end of life planning.
yeah. So the question that was originally asked to me was, is this a great time of the year to get your estate plan in place? And the way I answered that is, technically every time of the year should be a great time of the year for people to get their estate plan in order and all these documents to avoid these core processes. The reality of it is there is no great time of the year because we're dealing with death. And as I mentioned earlier, when someone loses a loved one, sometimes it's somebody very, very close to them and they're mentally, physically, emotionally going through it. And now they find out they can't access, money is, just to bury them possibly, stuff like that. And that's a true story that I came across my desk over the years. And it's just, there's nothing worse than having a conversation with someone who's already dying, okay, and they've been given a life expectancy, a very short one, and they love living life, and they love their family, and they've never had an illness before, and then boom, they're hit with this, and then they have that conversation about what's going to happen to your house, and what do you want us to do with this, and all this money in the bank, where does it go, and it's a much easier conversation when nobody's sick. We're just pre-planning, getting things in order, whether it's trust, a will, medical directives, power of attorneys, guardianships, whatever that might be. We want to get those things in position. Help people avoid 3 or 4 processes through the different types of documents we put together and assemble for our clients. So it's important. It's important to get done. There is no good time of the year. My business is pretty steady, 12 months a year. It's pretty consistent, but it's not like every day I'm doing estate plans because it's very difficult to find the people to understand the importance of it. And I'll give an example. One of the favorite things that people like to say And I was just at a senior expo. I've been at two of them in the last month and a half, and seeing these seniors come through, and a lot of different services are there for them, and they see you sitting there, and they see what you do, and they're like, "Oh, I'm okay. I'm not ever gonna die." And it's cute. It's a joke, and they're playing and what have you, and then they usually follow it up with, "Oh, that's my kid's problem. That's my kid's problem, not mine." And what I would say to those people that say that, and I know it's all in good fun and what have you, is don't put on kids. Don't make your kids responsible for that mess. Don't make your kids responsible for having to hire lawyers to get through acquiring your assets that were meant for them to begin with, because you're taking money out of your kids, off of your kids' plate. You're taking that money and it's now going to attorneys because it's not cheap. So that's what I'd say. I know it's cute when people say that, but I'd say, be proactive when it comes to this plan.
And do it while you're healthy so that when you're ill, you can focus on healing.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. So around what time did you start your business?
So I started my business. So I left the big firm I was with when I found myself in executive leadership, and it was J.P. Morgan Chase. And I decided at December of 16 that it was a great time for me to kind of relocate. And I moved to Nashville, Tennessee. I got out to Nashville, Tennessee, and J.P. Morgan Chase wasn't out there yet. They are today, but they weren't then. So transfer wasn't an option for me, or else I'd still be working for that company. But I moved out there and gambled on myself and thought, I'm going to have no problem finding work. We're going to get out there. We're going to get it going. And then I fell into that overqualified bucket, and I couldn't land anywhere. So I was kind of forced into doing this. While I was just getting different licenses and different things to figure out what my next career was going to be and how I was going to proceed, I did land a job with a bank. And I landed this job with this bank. I lasted about 6 months. And it was just a very poor culture, the threat and intimidation factor, very unmotivating when it comes to leadership and trying to help somebody get better. They're threatened write-ups and stuff of that nature, and that was never my style. It was always find ways to help them, not write them up. It's counterproductive. But that was their culture still. They were a little behind out there, and they weren't there yet. And I just couldn't do it. But the last client I helped is what pushed me over the edge, as I was already looking. And I mentioned it earlier. It was a young lady who came in. Her mother died, her last living parent, and she had one account. It was a checking account. It had $100 some odd thousand. Not only was it not in the family trust that they had done, they had this in place. It wasn't in the family trust. Not only that, it didn't even have a beneficiary on it. Now I have this poor young lady sitting in front of me, bawling her eyes out because she has no money to bury her mother. Only child, the money's hers. It's just she can't access it because she's not even a beneficiary. It's just an individual account. And because it was over the threshold of a small estate affidavit would be out there, it required a probate process. And it ended up costing this young lady, I don't know, upwards of $10,000 to $15,000 to get access to that money. And she had no money to bury her mom. And it was at that point that I said, that's enough. I can make a difference. I got to get out there. So what I did was I immediately fired my employer. And man, that felt good. And you've never seen an HR company and the executive management and the CEO of a company get on the phone with someone so quick. Within an hour, they had me on the phone wanting to know why. And we spoke to it, and I still decided it was best that I move on. But I went and interviewed 23 attorneys in a couple different states and asked them why, over the course of my career, and most of these questions were rhetorical, have I seen so many families affected by probate, but they have these plans in place. And the answer from all of them was, well, they're not funding their trust. Funding their trust is a fancy word for transferring assets into the trust. Now, I knew that answer, so my follow-up was, what do you do to help them? And all of them said, every single one of them said the same thing. It's not our responsibility. We don't take that on. And I walked out of there saying, that's my business, my service. My service is my business. Now, all my plans are very different. I'm very custom to the client. There's a lot of proven language and state-specific stuff that's within some of these documents. But for the most part, based on their assets, it's custom. And, for me, the most important part of my business is the accessibility to me, my employee, my team, and staying with clients until they have gotten their assets transferred into a trust. When it comes to a house, you're dealing with a property deed and getting that transferred and recorded. And a lot of clients that will spend, $5,000 to $10,000 to these attorneys, step out with this beautiful box binder full of documents, overwhelming to them because they don't know what any of it means. They just know they need it, and they think they're set. And then nothing else takes place. If we never put the house in it and what have you, and then the time comes to sell the house after they're no longer with us, and it was never put in the trust, therefore the trust doesn't go, therefore they're still in a probate position, although they had all the documents in order to avoid a probate position. So I did what every business should do, but not many do, is I reverse engineered, started with how am I going to service my clients. I have a 5-step process that, that's for another show, but I have a 5-step process. And number 5 is how will you service your clients? And if you don't start there, there's no point in acquiring them.
Wow. Can you give us a little preview of your 5-step process?
Well, it always starts with the product and service, right? I mean, the first step is the product and service. What is it? Is it going to bring anything to the community? Is it going to solve a problem? Is it going to create benefit and value? Is it going to help somebody else? Is it going to uplift someone? Whatever it is, whether it's a product or service, you have to diagnose that first, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have a bunch of acquisition plays and different things in between. And then number 5 is how am I going to now service that client? If I acquire one client and they're on board and they pay me, and maybe I'm a membership-based business, so they pay me monthly, and I do a horrible job of taking care of them. But I go out and acquire my second customer. Because I'm not taking care of my customer, they walk out the back door. I've now acquired my second customer. I'm still at one customer. I'm not growing my business. And it's because I didn't have the ability to service my client in the first place. So if you don't build out back end on any business and how you are going to take care of your client when something goes wrong or they don't understand something, then you're missing the boat. And you're going to struggle with attrition. You're going to be fighting attrition battle all the time. You're going to go acquire a couple, you're going to lose a couple. You're going to acquire a couple, and you're going to get nowhere fast. If you want to be more than a one-hit, not looking for sustainability. Now, some people, it's a shot on goal. Once you pay them, they're done. They don't care anymore. That's fine. That's buyer beware type of stuff. Be careful who you do business with and so forth. But for me, I'm looking for sustainability. I build businesses to last and make a difference. So it's very important I know how I'm going to take care of my client.
Right.
Yeah. So you got number 1 and you got number 5.
So how do you plan to educate people about the importance of estate planning?
Well, obviously platforms such as this, I'd love to speak. Moving into next year, my goal is to speak at least a minimum once a month. A great target market for me is work with my realtors and lenders. They have a major opportunity to make a difference in their clients' lives as they're acquiring homes and so forth. I do speak to those folks. I go in quite often. So, with almost 20,000 realtors and many different agencies out here in this market throughout the valley, the goal is to get in front of as many of them as I can and bring education. I do my quick presentation on what is an estate plan, and we go into each specific document and how it helps and how it works. Then I will tie it into business and how that works, which we'll talk about in a minute. And, that's the game plan. I do a lot of live videos on my Facebook feed. I go into a lot of different business groups and jump in there live. If they want to go straight to, but they don't require moderator approval, I go straight in and I just educate. I just bring information and encourage people to contact me. I give complimentary consultations. So if I can come down and speak to a group of 15 or 20, or someone can invite me down for a one-on-one because they want to know more. That does not cost a penny from my time. I just want to get the message out and I want to be an option. A lot of people associate what I do with attorneys. What's associated with attorneys is expensive. It's high cost, so they don't get it done. So I'm very affordable. We'll do payment plans with these folks. They get my cell phone. They have accessibility to me 7 days a week. and I'm available for them. You're not going to call and go through my gatekeeper and have to make multiple calls to get to me. You can pretty much get to me because all my clients get my cell phone number to call me at any time. So most business owners won't do that. You're not going to find an attorney that can do that. In fact, you're probably not going to find an attorney who can call his office directly and get to him. So I figured, I got to fill the void and just be accessible, give good service, stay in contact with my clients, and make sure their assets are transferred. So I just want to be an option. If someone wants to work with an attorney, I do work in a law firm. I have 2 offices in there, and we could bring an attorney in.
Mhm.
But, we bring the cost down if we don't.
Right, right, right. So you've really optimized the process so that, um, so that you save costs for your clients and get them the exact protection that they need or the right plan, I guess.
Absolutely. In fact, I record their deed for them. I go down to the county and get their deed recorded to make sure the property is in a trust. There's a lot of benefits to a trust without getting specific into those, but there's a lot of benefits to them. But the most important thing is when you own a home, there's only a few ways for the home to transfer after death, but the superior way to do it is making sure there's a trust with a pre-named executor within that trust who can now take over. All right, the house can't transfer ownership without a probate process. Okay, so it's important for me that the house gets recorded, so I take that off my client's plate. I prepare the deed, get it ready, they sign it, notarize, and the last step outside just following up to make sure we get assets transferred and working with them on that is I go down, have that deed recorded, then I deliver their estate package with a recorded deed and fully signed and executed, ready to go.
And then they're good.
They're good on the house, and then we advise and consult on the bank accounts, the investments, the life insurance, stocks, bonds, PERS, whatever it is. I can't call their financial companies, the banks, of course. I can't call them on their behalf, so they have to do some legwork. I hold them accountable. I stay on top of them. Hey, did you get this done? So when I interview a client, I go through what their assets are. Amounts aren't important to me, but I need to know what they're holding so I can advise accordingly. And then once I have that information, my 10-day follow-up is, have you had the chance to do X, Y, Z? And if they hadn't, then I'm saying, okay, I'm going to call you back in about another couple weeks, give you some more time. I know you're busy. Then I'll make a second call, but I don't let them off the hook until I'm comfortable they've got all their assets transferred or at least in a position to avoid probate. And once we're on the same page there, then they're good to go. And I just call them annually to see if they've acquired anything new or made any changes to what they have. I can make sure they didn't forget. One of the big things that's happened over the last 2 years, Miko, was these interest rates were at an all-time low, and people were taking advantage of them. Some of these people were refinancing their property possibly for the last time because they were getting like a 2% and some change interest rate, and these houses, these properties were in trust, but then they get an inexperienced lender who really isn't paying attention to them, and then out of sight, out of mind for them, and then the houses are refinanced, and all the while they're taken out of their trust. I also do complimentary deed reviews for people too. If somebody has a home and wants me to just double check and make sure that their deed is still in their trust and the lender didn't inadvertently, unbeknownst to them, take it out of their trust. So that's why I call my clients once a year. Have you acquired any new assets? Have you changed banks? You still have all this? Have you bought any new houses, properties? Have you refinanced? A whole bunch of stuff that I do to make sure my client is taken care of and stays out of the process.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So are there any tips you have for people to who are business owners maybe who need to think about transferring their business?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to the protection of a business owner, if you formed your business properly, you should have an operating agreement. Now, there's many templates to create operating agreements. There's some very, very basic, and some can be more complex. Most people choose the basic one because it can answer a handful of questions, get it in there, and they're good to go. When you create an operating agreement and you want to tie that back to your estate, your personal estate, you got to have an ironclad death clause in that operating agreement. And in that death clause, it's very specific as to what happens your share of the business. If it's 100% your business, then it reverts back to your family trust. If you're a 25% owner in a partnership, then you can indicate your 25% ownership, once you pass, goes on to your family trust, which now allows the executor of your family trust to work with the business owner or anybody else who they might need to work with to liquidate assets, dissolve the business possibly, whatever needs to be done. But you're not going to find that in the standard operating agreement. So it's a custom deal. Like you might have a basic death clause, so it's a custom. I have about 15 different types of death clauses, and we go with the one that seems to make the most sense. So I recreate one myself, and we get it into the document and add that in there. And we get very specific, and that's how somebody can now take their business and get it tied right back into their personal estate.
Okay. So at what point do you think it's a good idea to start planning to doing estate planning, like right away, or if you have like what if you don't have a home, or you're renting and you're just starting a business or something like that? What steps do you take?
So the initial answer is there's no time like the present. So I'll run through a few things. If you do not own a home, a trust might not be the right document for you. Maybe you do a last will and testament. Maybe you don't do anything. You just make sure you got beneficiaries on your assets, bank accounts, investments, life insurance policies, stuff of that nature. Beneficiary also avoids the probate process. So if you don't own a home, we don't do a trust. Unless you foresee yourself owning a home down the road, then we just put it in place, and the trust don't die. You can always add the home into it 10 years from the date you created your trust, provided nothing's really changed with regards to the named people in your trust, if you will. So I would say with the trust, if there's no home, there's no need. But we're also talking about power of attorneys. We're talking about financial power of attorneys. Now, your estate's not dealt with until you're dead, but you can become incapacitated. And the hypothetical I'll use is you get in that car accident and you're still with us, but you can't speak for yourself, you can't talk, you can't do anything. So who keeps running your business? Who pays your bills? Who does all the things necessary? Well, a financial power of attorney, will suffice. If you have that, then you're going for either a guardianship or conservatorship hearing, and you got to go through a court process to get that, to get conservatorship over somebody to be able to deal with them. So say all the money's tied up in the business and no one can get access to the business money to fund the personal accounts. You got to have those power of attorneys in place. So I would say everybody should have somebody in their life who they trust to handle their affairs if they become in an incapacitated state. So I'd say everyone should have power of attorneys for financial. Healthcare as well. Healthcare is just the opposite of financial, except it's the same thing but dealing with healthcare. So you want someone to be able to make those decisions. Your medical directives, your living will, and any type of advanced medical directive, I think those are important as well. I mean, those are given instructions based on your wish to somebody to carry those out without them making, a call that wasn't what you wanted. They get very specific as to from disposition of your body to, what happens when I'm in a vegetative state, and everyone's different. I'll tell you, some folks are, if I'm in a vegetative state, cut me off. Some folks are high religious beliefs, and they feel that there's a higher power that's going to come down and save them. As long as I've got a breath, I don't care if the machine's helping it, keep me going. And that's respectable either way. You support them based on what they want. It's their life, it's their wishes. So it just depends on the person. But I'd say the power of attorneys and medical directives are very important in place. At the very least, have those in place. That's not expensive to get done. And then, that's pretty much it for the most part. Everything else is typically a big package deal where you do a trust, you get a memorandum of trust. Also along the medical lines, I do a medical disclosure authorization form. It's basically a HIPAA release form. HIPAA is a medical regulatory agency that basically, regulates the medical industry from releasing your medical records without your permission. And they can be fined and liable for doing so. So they need authorization on file. This is most commonly happens when somebody passes away possibly, and life insurance companies looking to pay out. They do their due diligence, and they're going to want to see medical records to make sure that it's a payable policy based on the type of death. And somebody's loved one, next of kin, might not even be able to access those without having this release to be able to provide to the hospital to release them of liability. So that's another medical form. So I would suggest, at the very least, your power of attorneys and all your medicals, get those in order. Everyone doesn't need a trust. And then, of course, if you have a business, I would probably have a trust as well, and then just tie my assets back to. Because the big thing about the trust is, is like I mentioned earlier, we're naming that executor. We call it a successor trustee. So we are pre-naming that person. So if the asset is governed by the trust, that pre-named person is now authorized to start acting when you're no longer with us. So we want to make sure, that's in place when we can. It's important. It really comes down to dealing with the financial and medical professionals and what they want. So I would say now is the time.
Now is the time. Well, now is certainly the time. That's been super helpful. Thank you, Rick. Where can people find you to get more information and to work with you?
Absolutely. So Save on Estate Planning is one business venture I have. I branded myself as Mr. Cos. So you can go to mrcoz.com. That's MRCOZ.com. You can see all my different businesses. It'll link you and take you into all the different things I do. We're launching a tax business in January. I'm also a licensed tax professional. My office is downtown at Charleston and 7th at 820 South 7th Street. And the phone number down there, I don't know that one by heart, is 702-867-3280. If I'm not in the office, it comes to my cell phone. So you'll always be able to get me if you need to. Probably the best way for anyone to get hold of me and kind of see what else I'm up to. And all my businesses are 100% designed to help and make a difference in others' lives, whether it's saving them money, making them money. That's the goal for me.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your love of business with us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Everyone. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to The Love of Business at prconnectionsradio.com. Do stay tuned for more shows, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much.